Hello and welcome to Training Bytes. My name is Mike Gibb from accountsrecovery.net, and with me is Mary Shores from Mary Shores Communications, who is going to offer some great insight and advice. Mary Shores is a second-generation agency owner, best-selling author, and creator of the Collection Advantage online program, which is designed to help collectors create and execute high-converting scripting to increase your cash flow and decrease complaints. Today in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to negotiate a payment plan, the top-down strategy that results in higher monthly payment plans. Mary, thanks for joining us today. This is a great topic. Where would you like to begin?
Thanks, Mike. I agree. It's a great topic because I think that one of the ways that collectors can easily improve is by looking at their negotiation strategies. And what I mean by strategies is the first important thing is to have a set of guidelines. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you create a payment grid that says this balance gets this many payment arrangements. So for example, it could say $0 to $1,000, you're going to allow this many months to pay the account in full. Or if it's 1,000 to say maybe 3,000, you're going to allow this many months. So that's simple, but we want to start with a set of payment guidelines. The second thing that is highly effective when it comes to negotiating payment plans is having a strategy. So in the Collection Advantage program, I teach my signature negotiating strategy, which is called Payment Plans That Work. And at the core of this strategy is I want to teach collectors how to negotiate from the top down, because what I see happen often is collectors have a tendency to negotiate from the bottom up instead of from the top down. Do you know what I mean by that, Mike?
I don't. Can you please explain it?
I would love to. So years ago, when I was first developing this system and I was working in my agency, I had this very big problem I was trying to solve, which was every time when my collectors were speaking to consumers on the phone, the consumer would say something along the lines of, "I'll be happy to pay you $50 a month." To which my collectors would respond almost 100% of the time with, "I'm sorry, we don't take $50 a month payments. That's below our minimum." And as soon as the consumer would hear that, they would then respond with, "Well, what is your minimum payment?" And my collector would say, "It's 75 or it's 100 or whatever that number may be." And that's where the negotiations stopped. I truly believe that you have room. You're leaving a lot of money on the table by not having a strategy. So imagine if you can 2x or 3x the average amount of the payment arrangements. So the way to do that is you want to get the collectors starting with the full balance. And even if the consumer has stated that they're not going to be able to pay the balance in full, we want to make sure that the first offer that we give them is very, very high. We want it to be as high as possible. And then we want to start negotiating down instead of responding to a low number, because once we've responded to a low number, it's almost impossible to recover that payment arrangement. Hopefully that makes sense, Mike.
Sure. Does that mean then that the collector should be the first person to offer a number, so to avoid starting from the consumer offering a lower number first?
Depending on where they're at in the call, that might make sense, but sometimes the consumer will throw out a number at the very beginning of the call. So if they're prepared to respond the right way, the important thing is we need to not say no. So here's an example. If the consumer says, "I'll pay you $50 a month," rather than say no, what we want to say instead is, "Let's go ahead and update your information so we can discuss your options." So now we're going to go through all of our information. We're going to make sure that we have our demographics correct. And after that, we can say, based upon our conversation, I can offer you 2 payments of $575. How does that sound? The consumer is going to say no. And then we can split it again into 3 payments.
So it's almost, for lack of a better term, it's almost sort of like redirecting or distracting the consumer away from that initial number to restart the conversation and restart the negotiation.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that, because here's what I have found. When we're responding with that low number, it's difficult for the collector to be able to then go turn it around and ask for a really high number. When we're staying in control of the conversation right from the beginning, we're able to be in control and start to divide those numbers up. There's one more piece of this that I would really like to share with you, which is how we then monitor this strategy. So we want to have the strategy built out ahead of time, and we want to make sure that we're training the collectors on how to use it. Okay, so something that happened recently at my agency was we had two collectors, and one of them was getting almost double on payment arrangements as another one. So one lady's name is Pam and the other person was Scott. So Pam was actually the person collecting more. Now Pam's personality, she's kind of like what I call the Betty White. She's super, super sweet. So initially I was thinking that she was collecting more. She was getting higher promises and higher payment arrangements because she had this super sweet Betty White personality, as opposed to Scott, who is ex-military, very professional, very good at what he does, and he's been a collector for over 20 years. So in the beginning, I thought this was a personality thing, but what we found is that Pam, 100% of the time, was starting with the highest possible payment arrangement. So if Pam had to say to that consumer, sir or ma'am, we can offer you 3 payments of $17,000, Pam had no shame. She was totally prepared to receive that no. And that's okay, because what we need to tell our collectors is that it's okay to get that no. I find that there's a little bit of what I call a fear of a freak out. So collectors can be timid, collectors can be nervous to throw out a very high payment arrangement because they're worried about that fear of the freak out. Okay, so once we can get them over that fear, we teach them to expect the consumer to reject their first 3 offers and understand it's probably going to be their 3rd or their 4th offer that's ultimately going to be the one that is accepted. So in this situation, all I had to do was ask Scott to start his first offer with the highest possible number. Within 2 days, he doubled his payment arrangements.
So do you start with a payment in full, or do you start with the idea of a payment plan right from the beginning?
So what we like to do, and what I train in the Collection Advantage program, is you want to get a certain amount of no on the payment in full. So you want to always start with the full balance, of course, and we teach people to ask the same question in 3 different ways. So what we're looking for is payment in full within 30 days. So we first might ask them for payment in full, and if they say no, we then might ask them to split it. Can you pay half today, half in 2 weeks? And if they say no, we might say, would you be willing to pay half in 2 weeks and half in 4 weeks? And if they say no to that again, now we're going to start saying, let's go ahead and update your information so we can discuss your options. So that kind of gives a little bit of a pause in the conversation, which is very important and vital to moving the call forward. So now we're gathering that information, and we want to start with the highest possible payment arrangement possible, even if that number is thousands of dollars, even if we know without a shadow of a doubt that that consumer is going to reject that payment arrangement. Now, another thing I want to mention about this, Mike, that's very important is the consumer and the collector may be a little bit apprehensive about setting up a payment arrangement that's higher than what they can afford. But the truth is that the negotiation strategy makes it's the perfect way to get to the right sweet spot for that particular consumer. And what I mean by that is that there's always there's always like a top amount that this consumer is able to pay. Maybe they don't want to pay that amount, but they are able to. So we need to get them into that comfort zone of where this payment should be. And in order to do that, we need to get them to reject 2 to 3 prior payment arrangements that were offered.